Welcome to the Magic Money and Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Donovan, a psychic business coach, strategist, and wealth activator for coaches, healers, and entrepreneurs who are ready to activate their millionaire frequency and step into overflow by scaling to seven figures and beyond without sacrificing their freedom or soul. With over 2 million in sales across my online and offline businesses, I know what it takes to create real sustainable overflow. And through my work, hundreds of entrepreneurs have stepped into their highest wealth timeline, collapsing income ceilings and calling in 30K, 50K, and even 100K months with more clarity, ease, and magic than ever before. Inside this space, we blend grounded strategy, energetic mastery, and a whole lot of magic so you can create wealth that flows, a business that expands you, and a life that feels as rich as it is free. This is your space to activate your millionaire frequency and live inside your overflow era. You're here for millions, magic, and more life. So let's make it inevitable. Hello, my loves. I hope you are having the best start to your day. So, when I first started my business, I was charging $50 an hour. And now my 12-month coaching packages are $60,000. And in today's episode, we're going to actually be diving into the energetics and strategy of what goes on behind the scenes in order to receive, normalize, and hold the prices at that level. And if you have ever felt the pull to raise your prices, but the fears, guilt, or the thoughts of what if nobody buys and those spirals just keep you looping from actually raising your price, this episode is going to be so helpful. So again, when I first started my business, I was charging $50 an hour for a single session. And at the time, I was full-time teaching. I had a 4-year-old, a 7-year-old, I had my dog, my husband, my husband and I had a business together. And I have just a very full life outside of my new business. So I was selling these single sessions, right? I was building up my confidence and experience within, initially it started for free. And then once I started actually pricing, it was at $50. And then what I would do is get people to upgrade into packages of 4. And then I moved that from, $50 to 75 to 125, then to 250 per session. And at every single jump in pricing, the same fears and thoughts would come up. Who am I to charge that? Will people really pay that? And then also, like, will people really pay that for healing, psychic guidance, coaching? It was really interesting with all of the talk about niching. I always like felt like I needed to be niched into like, well, will people pay for that for healing? Will people pay for that for psychic guidance or for coaching? Instead of like really seeing how unique my work is and what I do, I always was like feeling the need to like put myself in a box and that was never helpful. So that question of will people really pay that came up. What if clients didn't want to pay that and then I lost clients, right? And so that fear would come up. Am I really good enough to charge that? Especially when I was in the beginning stages and really like just building my authority, my credibility. That question of am I good enough came up a lot. And at this time I was always seeing people who were charging less than me, and at that point very few who charged more. And that subtle guilt would kick in whenever I saw people criticizing others for charging for those things. Like, I can't believe she charges X amount for this, or I can't, so and so is charging this much and healing should be free, or all of those things, the judgment and the shame that gets projected onto people who are charging for their magic, their gifts, their work, especially women in the healing field, in any type of spiritual field. It's always, I've just always heard people project their own limitations and their limiting beliefs around money onto that. So, especially in the beginning, that came up a lot. Now, charging these amounts meant, especially at the 50, the 75, and the 125 range, like charging those amounts meant I had to keep a full-time job. I was full-time teaching. I couldn't leave it on those rates. And I could only take a limited number of clients because my family and life outside of my business were and still are very important to me. And so I couldn't have, you know, the amount of clients that would replace my full-time teaching and still also be very present in my personal life. And then that also meant I had even less time to create free or low ticket offers, to be able to help people at all levels. I couldn't do that, right? I also didn't have the time to market my business, and trying to juggle all of it left me burnt out a lot. And I knew that that energy wasn't the best energy for my clients. And then one day, Spirit showed me way back, years and years ago, the women healers, witches, mystics, midwives were told that it was bad to charge for their services, that they should do it for free or for very little. And this collective belief led these women to need to find other means in order to survive and feed their families. So they couldn't spend as much time on their craft, which led them to being exhausted, which dimmed their powers, and it led to them not being in their full power. And that allowed the patriarchy to continue to be what it is today. Because if the women healers, the witches, the mystics were in their full power and full energetic frequency, whoo, man, this world would be so much better for everyone. So when Spirit downloaded this in and showed me of how they slowly, basically got healers and these powerful women to shut their own gifts down, I knew that if I wanted to be the best for my clients, for my family, and for myself, I had to charge more. So I did the inner work. I looked at my fears, my limiting beliefs. I looked at my energetic field. I looked at my past lives, ancestral ties, healer, and witch wounds. I did the nervous system and somatic work. And after I cleared all of the resistance, I took the leap and raised my prices. And one of the things that was so helpful for me was, I said if I raise my price and no one buys, I can always just lower them again. But so many people won't do that, and they're afraid to do that because they don't want to feel the uncomfortable feeling of potential judgment from others, of seeing people raise their prices and then lowering it. And I was just like, you know what? Like, I don't give a fuck. I don't care what people are going to say or think. I'm going to raise my price, and I can, if it doesn't sell, I can lower it again. Like, not that big of a deal. And especially with if you have any type of services, like it is not a big deal to lower your prices if you need to. But every single time I raised my rates, right? If any of those thoughts come up, I would work on them and be able to release them even faster than before. And it's funny because, as you get those, you would think that like, oh, they would just be gone forever. But what I find is every time I've reached like a significantly new level, sometimes those feelings resurface because they're muscle memory, or I've heard people around me say it at that point, right? Where all of a sudden people will need to make comments on pricing. I remember I had a family friend who reached out to um, my parents. There were actually a couple of family friends who reached out to my parents about my pricing. They saw my pricing online, and they saw the money that I was making on mine, and they made some comments, and it got back to me about them thinking I was lying or that I was making it up, or like all kinds of things that they were saying. And that those judgments sometimes, at one level they don't come up, and then as you progress and you get past what the current comfort zone of those around you, sometimes those things start being said, and they activate the fears again. Um, okay, so then at around the $250 a session mark, that's when I started to see how selling single sessions was actually a disservice to my clients. I would started to see how like I would help them, but it would be short term. It'd be like a quick 5K, 7 clients would reach out. But then it was like it would be great, but then if something happened, because I wasn't there to support them in the growing of it, or in the day-to-day grind of their business, so to speak, I would notice that they'd come back a month, two later, and they'd be dealing with a new set of things that they were struggling with. And I started to see how important having long-term, ongoing, energetic, and psychic support was. Not just even in the strategy. I mean, the strategy was huge too, because I would, channel content. And then once our time was done with channeling the content, it was like, okay, well, what next? Right? Or like, okay, well, now I have a new offer. And what's the content? What does Spirit say about this offer's content? And so I started to really see how that ongoing support is so helpful for clients. And I started to offer them. At first, I started with 6-month options. I did 4 calls a month, Voxer, and then like all of my courses that I was teaching, things like that, for 1,111 a month. And at that point, my clients were having record breaking results. They were going anywhere from 10 times to 72 times ROI. So the return on investment, they would pay 1,000, and I had clients who were going anywhere from 10,000 to $72,000 in 1 month. So it was insane, the results that my clients were having. And I had this belief at that time that in order to raise my prices, I needed to be sold out and have a wait list. Well, at the time that I was, charging this amount, I was still teaching full time. And if I wanted to be able to leave teaching, I realized I had to raise my prices again. Now, at the time, I'd been working with a mentor, and when I joined her mastermind, I originally was paying $2,888 a month, and then I went to $3,888 a month, and I had signed on for a year at that rate. And I remember watching her raise her prices and then nobody coming in. And then I watched her raise it again and no one came in. And then she raised it again. She actually never lowered it. She just kept raising it. And then when she got to 5,555 a month for her mastermind, all of a sudden a flood of people came in. I think it was like 7 came in, and then she raised it again to 7,777 a month. And more people were joining. I think 4 people joined at that time. And then some of them were even paying in full. So they were paying $70,000. And I was like, dang, if she would have, and I remember thinking this, and I remember asking her, like, if you would have stopped because people weren't buying when you raised it from 3,888 to 4,000, if you would have stopped then, I see we had 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, like 11 people came in. Like, holy shit. She wouldn't have had, her multiple 6-figure month. She wouldn't have had all of these people whose lives she was changing. If she would have just been like, oh, well, no one's buying, so therefore I'm not going to raise it. Right? And there's so much evidence. Like, this was so much evidence that just because people aren't joining doesn't mean that you're charging too high. You actually can be charging too low, and people not seeing the value of the offer because it's too low. I remember asking the women who joined at this level, like, why didn't you join at the lower level? And for some, it was one, they didn't even see it at the lower levels. They just saw it at the higher level. But it was also a match of the investment and the world that they wanted to play in. So for example, they were looking for a mastermind to be around women who were at that level of making, and then also like had the disposable income to pay over 7 grand a month or over 5 grand a month into a mastermind. They're playing in a different field of women, and being around other women who are at a level or higher level than they want to be in. And so who are at a higher level that they want to be in. And so it was really just like mind blowing to me at that time, because everyone else around me in my personal life, had the belief that if it's not selling, you need to just lower your price. And so this was really the first time where I saw, okay, if it's not selling, you may want to raise it. And I think that there is very much an energetic balance for it, because I am not saying at all you just automatically raise your price because there is very much something about who your audience is and knowing the very real reality of who you're speaking to. Now, this person, my mentor, she was speaking to women who were making multiple six figures already, who were wanting to go to the millions. So for her to charge much less for the mastermind, like the women literally said, they, when it was the ones that had seen it was priced at lower, they didn't see the value in it. Now, but if you're talking to somebody though who has a much different opinion or who is at a much different level in their business, they're going to be thinking something totally different. So you really have to know your audience. You really have to know who is in your space, and then you have to look at the energetics as well. I have had clients where, you know, their pricing drags them down so much where they actually became resentful of it. Now, I don't think at any shape, any time that you are should lower your prices if you feel resentment towards the pricing. And this is where if you are feeling the resentment, the anger, the just any type of negative feeling towards your pricing, then you need to raise it. You need to raise your prices if you are feeling anything negative about your current prices, right? And the clients who you're attracting. If you are not excited to get on the phone and work with your clients because the pricing, you're like, I would rather be binge watching Netflix right now. I would rather be with my family. I would rather be doing anything else. Then that tells you that you are absolutely charging too low, right? And there is a very psychological process that happens when it comes to pricing. So we need to keep that in mind, and it plays a role in who you're speaking to. So that was what really I kind of had gotten the courage to raise my price to 2,222 a month. And there was a moment for me that clients didn't immediately flood in, right? I had to look at who my ideal client was, who I was being at that level. I had to look at the woman who was at that level personally and in business, where she could easily pay $2,000 a month. My messaging and my marketing had to change to speak to that type of client versus who I had been working with in the past. The things that would have attracted in my messaging and marketing, one level of client, like especially in the beginning of my business, it was a lot of new people in business, people who didn't know what they wanted to do, or what their business should be. They were looking for, like, tell me what to do, right? Or they had money blocks to making 1K a month, right? Or they just wanted their first 10K, right? That the newness or that level, the conversations are different, the struggles are different, the desires, can be different. And so I had to adjust my marketing to really speaking to the woman who knows that higher levels are meant for her, who already has an established business and she's looking to grow. Or I had a clients also at this level where they were established offline and they wanted to come online, so the level of business expertise, the level of, confidence in themselves, trust in themselves, I had to speak to a totally different person. And at every level that I've had to raise my prices, I've had to reevaluate the level of dream clients that they are at and make sure that my messaging and pricing aligned with them. Right? It wouldn't make sense if I'm charging 5K a month to somebody who has no clue what they're doing or even want to do in a business. So once I up leveled my messaging and I started actually speaking to that higher level client and I got the higher level client in my audience, right? I was going into their spaces. So it'd be like Facebook groups, teaching in masterminds, speaking on podcasts that those clients are listening to, right? I put myself in front of those clients, spoke their language, talked about the things that they were struggling with, and that's when brought them into my community and into my audience. And then that's when that I started to sign clients at that rate. And again, then clients were having breaking Geez, words are hard today. Record-breaking results. Clients passing the million in their business. Others having anywhere from 20K to 100K months. Clients working with celebrities that they've had on their vision board for years. Signing contracts and deals to partner with companies that they've wanted to work with forever. Getting book deals. Getting their multi-million dollar dream homes that they had been wanting for over a decade, being asked to speak on stages, being invited to be guests at retreats and summits, and I mean, all kinds of places, right? Like my clients were having amazing results. But again, at the 2,222 mark, I had a belief that I couldn't raise my prices because I believed I needed to make more money myself to justify raising my rates. Even though my clients were having amazing results, I thought I had to make even more to be able to raise my price. And because a big piece of my core value is freedom and being able to have that the space and time to create offers at all different levels, having 20 to 40 clients didn't actually align with those values. So it was like because my values created resistance with having the amount of clients that at that price would make sense to, raise my to would actually allow me to have the higher level of income in order to raise my rates. Like it just, I looked at that and I was like, okay. And part of what made me look at it, it was Spirit hit me upside the head one day with the understanding that part of the reason I wasn't having those high income numbers was because I wasn't charging the amount I wanted to really charge. All of my clients were actually charging more than double what I was. Now, again, I saw people charge less. Doing what I do, I saw no one, I don't know if anyone actually does what I do, but people who were in similar fields, right? I was looking at healers and psychics and all. There was always somebody who was charging less than me, and there were always a few who were charging more than me. And I just realized it's like always how it's going to be. So instead of like seeing all of the evidence of people charging less than me, I looked to all the people who were charging more than me. And that was the, kind of kept my eye on the prize. I kept my eye on that, on the people who were charging more. You let that be the evidence that one, people are buying that people are finding value in that people are paying that, right? Like they have no problem paying that and they want to pay that. So that really helped to get me over that hump of, oh, I need to be at this certain level in order to charge this certain amount. Now, another fear that I had was that raising my rates would mean letting go of clients. And I loved my clients. I loved our work together. But I was seeing how staying at this level because of guilt of leaving them behind, fear of, who would then pay these rates, right? Like I was seeing that this was happening. So at first I did grandfather pricing. And this is where if a private client, if they decided to renew, I would keep them at the same price. And then there was a moment last year where I was like, no, this is my new price. And it's okay if there are, clients who choose that this isn't for them. And some joined me in this new pricing and some did not. And I had to be okay with that, right? I love these clients. I want what's best for them. Some were, buying homes, some had other plans, right? Like I'm not trying to have clients stay with me for the rest of their lives. Like that's not the goal, right? And so for some of these clients, depending on their business and personal goals, paying 5K a month for support wasn't, something that was aligned for them at this time. But one of the things that it did was it was opened up space for new clients. And at every price point, I've had to do the mindset, the energetic, the nervous system work to let the new price become my set point. Let the new price become my normal and feel neutral about it. I remember when I first started working on my 60K pay in fulls, feeling neutral in the body. I mean, I could get behind the 5K a month payment plans because other times I had received 5K pay in full. I had received, as much as 25K. So going then from 25K pay in full to a 60K pay in full, like the fears and of the expectations of that price won't be, right? Like I just had to work through that, doing the exact same process of looking at, okay, is there anything ancestral? Is there anything past life? Did I absorb anything? What limiting beliefs are there? What is the evidence? Walk myself through that process. And it's the entire process of what I do is what I teach inside of Wealth Unleashed because it has helped me every single time go raise my prices and feel good in the body about it and just allow it to sink in, right? And when you clean up the resistance, receiving and holding money at this level becomes so much easier. Now, if you've been circling a price point that no longer feels good in the body, it no longer feels right, no longer aligns with actually where you want to go, right? I remember I looked at, okay, if I want to make, $1 million and I want to have this amount of people in these programs, we get into the logic and the 3D, it'd be like, this makes no sense based on what I was pricing. If I'm pricing this amount, there's no way that I'm going to get to this yearly goal. So, looking at it also logically, what is your big goal? And then reverse engineering what your pricing needs to be then. And your new, you need to know that your next level requires not just a new number, but that new energetic set point to be able to hold it. So this is the work that we do inside my private coaching. If you are, and also in Wealth Unleashed, actually, like I said it earlier, in Wealth Unleashed and in my private coaching and in my mastermind. And so if this is something that you desire support with and you're ready to upgrade what you hold, what you charge, what you allow into your business, I'm going to go ahead and drop the links in the show notes, and I would love to hear from you. Please message me on Instagram or on Facebook. Let me know how this landed for you. Let me know what are you raising your pricing to, and I can't wait to celebrate your newest client at your newest price point. And I hope this is helpful, and I will see you on the next episode. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to the Magic, Money, and Marketing podcast. If you loved what you heard today, hit subscribe and leave a review. It helps more women like you activate their millionaire frequency and step fully into their overflow era. If you're ready to create wealth that feels as good as it looks, check the show notes for the next aligned way to work together or send me a DM on Instagram at It's Jennifer Donovan. You're here for millions, magic, and more life, so let's make it inevitable.